Avatar is a fascinating franchise. Not so much for the quality of its movies per se, but rather their puzzling lack of long-term impact upon the public consciousness. As this is despite both movies being enormous financial successes. Indeed, a pair of very few significant financial successes that Disney have had in the last decade plus. And yet, despite this, the movies have had practically zero cultural relevance. There have been pornos with greater mimetic value than the Avatar movies. And so, with a third entry in the series on the way, this is about the perfect time to talk about the remarkable lack of impact the movies have had on the populace at large. Now, there are two main reasons for this. The first and most obvious is that it took way too long for the second movie to come out. 13 years! But the second and more important reason is that subconsciously, the audience knows deep down that the humans did nothing wrong. A point we shall of course expand upon further, as the movies put a lot of effort into making it seem as if the humans did just that. In fact, as if the humans did a lot of things very, very wrong indeed. But first, the cultural impact, or near complete lack thereof, deserves closer investigation. As less than a year after either one's release, they were all but completely forgotten. Indeed, the only mentions of the Avatar franchise today is, well, talking about the next movie rather than reminiscing about the previous ones. Compare that to, say, The Joker, or Top Gun Maverick, or, to take another example, Helldivers 2. Normally, entertainment that touches hundreds of millions of people leaves a deep and immediately observable imprint on culture, via memes, via online discussions, etc. But not Avatar. Where are the Avatar memes, the spin-off projects, the fan content? Look at the Avatar Reddit, for example. 700,000 people, 42 of which are online. And as for spin-off projects, Avatar has received 2 games, both getting mixed to negative reviews, and the latest one, Frontiers of Pandora, was a disaster comparable to invading Russia in winter, reaching a pathetic peak of 2,600 players online. How is that even possible? This franchise has earned $5 billion in movie tickets, but no one wants to play a game based on it? How? Why? This is particularly peculiar when you also take into consideration Avatar's one actual cultural phenomenon, fittingly named PADS, Post-Avatar Depression Syndrome. Yeah, it's not a tremendously great sign when the only legacy a movie has is people feeling depressed after leaving the theater. But on the bright side, by that point they've already left their admission fees behind, so what does James Cameron care? But seriously though, how in the name of tentacle tail rape does this make any sense? On the one hand, people are so sad that they are not a 12-foot tall blue cat alien that they get depression. But at the same time, nobody wants to play the game where you are a 12-foot tall cat alien. This does not compute. But the answer to the question, well, it's both easier and more complicated than one might think. The reason for the failure of Frontiers of Pandora is because of representation. And I mean actual representation here, not DEI. I mean the way that the Navi, the indigenous kitty cats, are portrayed opposite the humans. In a game, you will necessarily need to immerse yourself into the role of a Navi in this case. Now, this is already a pretty big ask, as it is difficult to get people to side with the opposition against their own kind, which is what is happening in Avatar. The giant blue furries are the good guys, the silly little humans are the comically evil monsters. The vast majority of us are near automatically programmed to wish to sympathize with our own. Indeed, the recent phenomenon of certain political organizations actually developing a greater out-group preference than in-group preference is a near unique phenomenon in the history of humanity. And yet, of course, Avatar asks you to do just that, to favor the out-group. And so it goes to great lengths to make sure that the Navi are viewed as interesting, as adventurous, and as good as possible. But that is the problem. For you see, the Navi are not the good guys. There is something subtly yet deeply wrong with the way they are portrayed, as they are indeed unabashedly declared to be the straight up and up heroes of the movies. When you are engaging with a film, therefore, as a passive observer, you are simply told and shown a story. And at first blush, it does indeed seem as if the brave blue Nekos are fighting against the exploitative humans. But countless little things gnaw at the subconscious, until many, most people even, eventually conclude more or less cognizantly that the roles were in fact reversed. This is the reason why the movies do incredibly well. It is a simple experience, limited. You purchase a ticket, and you watch the pretty computer-animated pseudo-furries prance about for a bit. The brief exposure and narrated nature of the ride means your niggling subconscious can largely be ignored. But in a game, you are far more actively immersed, and for a far longer period of time as well. That sneaking sensation that all is not as it should be becomes harder and harder to ignore. Thus, whilst most people are eager and happy to visit Pandora, they don't want to live there. So let's get into the meat of it, shall we? Why the humans did nothing wrong, with the exception, that is, of one human. The true criminal all along, namely the traitor, Jake Sully. When we first meet Jake, he's clearly at his lowest ebb. An ex-Marine wounded in combat, he lost the use of his legs and apparent purpose in life. He lives on veterans' benefits and gets into bar fights. And that is likely all he would have ever done, were it not for the death of his brother. Jake's sibling had apparently undertaken long and difficult training, both physically and academically, to qualify for the RDA's Avatar program, a ludicrously expensive project intended to project a human consciousness into an avatar, a Navi body. The avatar must necessarily be closely linked to the subject's consciousness and nervous system. So when Jake's brother passed away, an event that Jake is remarkably blasé about, the RDA sees an opportunity to salvage their investment into the Avatar by recruiting Jake. This was a terrible mistake. For whilst Jake may share his brother's genetics, he has none of his training, none of his tact, and most importantly of all, Jake has absolutely no interest in being an ambassador. As he himself says, "All I want is a single thing worth fighting for." Jake is looking for a fight. He has been looking for a fight all his life, and has been provoking it all his life as well. And it is this desire that Eywa, the Navi god, will use to turn him against his own. For Jake is the perfect traitor. He has no real connections or bonds tying him to the rest of humanity. Just a whole heaping heck of a lot of grudges. He has seen Earth at its worst and has grown up on stories of Pandora, which he idealizes. Indeed, it may well be that it is the only thing he has any reverence for at all, because he is consistently uncooperative and selfish, endangering both himself and others by running around the moment he gets his Navi body. He makes absolutely no efforts to study or teach himself anything about his mission, or what the scientists or administrators expect of him. He only puts in an effort later to impress his native crush. And hell, we don't even need to go so far as to talk about loyalty to the mission, to the administration, to the people who are paying him and promising to fix him. Jake does not even care for himself. He is not even loyal to his person, as he gives up on his human form almost immediately. He stops eating, stops training, barely washes, and generally allows himself to waste away. This despite repeated promises by the RDA, by his superior officers, that they will fix his legs. They will restore him to full functionality in his human form. Promises that seem to have next to no effect on Jake at all. And to crown all of this, of course, Jake is incredibly selfish. It is always Jake first. Even when he is with the Navi, he acts this way. When there is a danger to his family, that they might be targeted by the RDA in the way of water, he flees, putting his own safety and his family above everyone else's, leaving the resistance behind in its most challenging hour. He later then, amongst the water tribes, argues that they cannot fight the humans in order to protect their ancestors and their own family. To do so would be an enormous mistake and very, very dangerous. That is not what Jake really means, of course, because immediately as soon as his family are in danger, now everybody has to fight. Jake Sully didn't care about the Forest Navi. Jake Sully didn't care about the Water Tribe Navi. Jake Sully only cares about himself and his family. And I don't even believe that to be a truly honest and honorable emotion. I simply think that Jake Sully likes having a family, and that is why he demands that all others must protect his family, whilst arguing vehemently against others protecting theirs. It is not that Jake Sully values family, it is that Jake Sully values the things that makes Jake Sully feel good. To put it very simply, Jake Sully is a bad person, and quite possibly the single worst person for the mission of negotiating with the Navi. A weakness that Eywa immediately capitalizes on. Now, it may seem like I am giving the Navi goddess a little bit too much credit in terms of agency here, as she is supposed to be some vast spirit-like entity, etc. But the very first time Neytiri sees Jake, she is preparing to kill him with an arrow to the back, until one Atokirina, a seed of the world tree, a very pure and sacred spirit, lands on her arrow and makes her not take the shot. The Atokirina, of course, are the spirits of Eywa, and this is Eywa very clearly marking Jake for a special purpose, even being shown to surround him with these special spirits later. It is in no small part because of this that Jake is accepted by the Navi, despite again the fact that there is not an honorable bone in his body, which seems like a high level of manipulation for a forest goddess. But again, the movie hints over and over, and in essence damn near straight out states, that Eywa is a form of super intelligence, a brain the size of a planet. Now, of course, simple size does not necessarily correlate to intelligence, but as Eywa also acts in direct response to pleas for aid by sending her creatures to fight off the humans in the first movie, it seems entirely reasonable to assume that Eywa is not only capable of taking an active part in this conflict, but is demonstrably doing so right now. So why should we not assume that she is also capable of gaining the services of collaborators? And in Jake, she chose exceptionally well. See, Jake and all the Avatars' intended mission was to establish negotiations and communications with the Navi to ensure as peaceful of a coexistence as possible. They had largely been unsuccessful in this, mostly because of the Navi. For example, a school had been established. It grew popular with the Navi children as it had colorful storybooks and exciting tales of different worlds. Exactly the kind of things that kids would love. But one day, some of the older Navi went out to attack a bulldozer, quote, setting fire to it. There is no further details about the dozer, but as they are massive damn things, setting one on fire would require significant effort. Later, we also see them being escorted by ground crews, meaning that it is quite likely the Navi attacked and killed them as well in the process of setting fire to the dozer, especially as security forces then pursue the attackers, indicating that security forces must have been relatively nearby and that there were probably casualties, as the RDA seems willing to inquire significant material cost in order to get the natives on their side. If they are willing to spend God only knows how much on the Avatar program, and also willing to build schools and to write the Navi a blank check for anything in negotiations, it seems patently ridiculous that they would hunt down and kill a bunch of Navi children over a bulldozer. The Navi then escape to the school, hoping that the scientists can protect them. But a fight breaks out, as we see tight groupings of bullet holes in the height of a fully grown Navi in the school. Yet again, the story says that they were but silly children that attacked the dozer. This is all very suspicious, especially when one takes into consideration Eywa's proven ability to manipulate individuals as well. But as a result of this incident, in which Ntiri's sister is killed as a part of the attackers, the Navi close themselves off from the humans. Jake is the first human to have gained entry to the tribe's tree since. And so the RDA makes the mistake, the very predictable mistake, of entrusting him with the negotiations, authorizing him to make any deal, blank check, whatever the Navi want, the company will provide. Jake is given 3 months to make a deal. Again, any deal whatsoever, any carrot to avoid the stick. And I stress that because Jake never even tries. Seriously, I know it sounds absurd, and the sheer length of the movie might have made you more or less forget that fact, but at no point does Jake even so much as mention the RDA's offer. He simply waves it away with a, "There is nothing we can give them." Seriously? Humanity is colonizing space. Yet there is nothing our space-age civilization could possibly offer these Stone-Age Neko-Neko-Nyanyans. No medicine, no agriculture, no communications equipment. Hell, let's not even go that far. We can't offer them writing? Math more complex than 1 + 1? This is a hunter-gatherer society whose oldest history is oral tradition reaching back a handful of generations. You could, I suppose, then argue that, oh, but the Navi have a close connection with nature. They are happy like that. No, they don't know any better than that. They don't know any different. And of course, then, you cannot simply go up to the Navi and say, hey, would you like us to build you roads? Because the prehistoric savages don't even know what a road is. They don't have a concept of infrastructure. They don't know about refrigeration. They don't know what it's like to not be constantly hungry or spending the entire day just searching for food. They don't know about sports, entertainment, or art. They have no culture beyond what Eywa has charitably bestowed upon them. Which clearly isn't all that much, seeing as when the school was allowed to be open, the children were immediately enthralled by the simplest pieces of entertainment. And of course, our entire interpretation, or more correctly, the movie's interpretation of the Navi, are based not on reality, but on two key cultural misunderstandings. The first fundamental misconception in modern society is that which conflates primitivity with freedom. We perceive the Navi to be free because they are not bound by the strictures of civilized life. They don't have to get up in the morning to go to work, to earn a living from menial factory labor. The Navi can go anywhere they want. They can ride horses, fly banshees, and eat and sleep wherever and whenever they want. And when they do something, it is presented as exciting, adrenaline pumping, and dangerous, but not too dangerous. No Navi ever dies in the hunting scenes or taming the banshees, etc. And this is very much so for our benefit. But in reality, of course, a society such as theirs would be bound by other, far more constricting shackles. They would constantly be searching for food. There are no fat Navi. They must hunt and gather constantly or starve. If the animals leave, they starve. If they overeat the fruits of the trees, they starve. The Navi are utterly dependent on nature to provide for them, and would spend the vast majority of their time simply securing their own existence. Yet again, quite handily, making it impossible for them to ever invent any culture beyond what Eywa has once more graciously granted them. The second misconception is the myth of the noble savage. The idea that because someone is primitive, savage, they are morally more pure and noble than those polluted by civilization. A quick glance at the history of the Aztecs, or Dahomey, or even feudal Japan will quickly dispel any such notion. There is no innate purity in simply being primitive. Indeed, many of the inexcusable moral crimes of today, such as slavery, for example, was actually a significant moral step forwards compared to simply just genociding the defeated opposition, as was the norm in our own Neolithic wars. But the Navi are very much so based on the idea of the noble savage. The Navi believe themselves to have the truth, the one and only truth, their goddess's truth. They view, therefore, the sky people as ignorant and unable to understand their superior ways. It is difficult to fill a cup that is already full, is a particularly noteworthy line, for whilst it is meant to indicate that the humans are unwilling to understand the Navi, it also shows that the Navi refuse to understand the humans, as the kitty cat's cup is no less full. Indeed, it is overflowing, as they are convinced that a space-age civilization has nothing to teach them. which once more complicates the task of diplomacy. It was Jake's and the other scientists' task to explain to the tree cats that their home tree sits atop an enormous mineral deposit that the human wants. They had 3 months to do this and find some sort of solution to move the Navi, or to extract the resources without destroying the home tree, or literally any other way to fix this. Yet again, blank check. But Jake never even mentions it. Not at any point does he try to explain to the Navi that they are sitting atop resources that the humans will have, regardless of any other circumstance. Instead, Jake spends his valuable negotiation time trying to fuck the chief's daughter. Quaritch, by the way, absolutely nails it here. You find yourself some local tale and you forget the team you're playing for. Correct. And again, tale provided by a certain goddess. As far as the rest of the humans can see then, the administration, the RDA, etc., 3 months have come and gone, and Jake has taken 0 actions to explain anything to the Navi, even less actions to negotiate a settlement. And so, when he attacks one of their dozers, naturally they assume his ass has gone native. And they're correct, and they move to arrest him. Entirely justifiably so. In fact, literally justifiably so, as Jake has indeed gone native. And the scientists' excuse for not taking any actions, because you'd think at least the other people would have done something, well, they just shrug and say that, well, trees and stuff are sacred to the Blueies. They store memories in them, and so nothing can be done. So we didn't do anything. And the reason why this is written the way it is, because this is obviously not convincing in the slightest. Yeah, but you didn't even try to convince them. Well, because we couldn't. The reason they didn't try is because if they attempted to do so in the movie, it would undermine the Navi. Obviously the Navi need writing, obviously the Navi need refrigeration, obviously the Navi need agriculture, etc, 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 the countless things that a space-age civilization could give them. But if these were all offered, the only possible explanation for the Navi's refusal is their own absolute bigotry against anything human, and so that was neatly ignored. And oddly enough, the excuse of, well, you see, it was hopeless to begin with, so we didn't even try, doesn't fly with the RDA administrators. And again, I stress here, the scientists and Jake Sully were given a blank check to make any deal, and they did not even try. They didn't even inform the Navi of the actions that the RDA were intending to carry out against them if they didn't reach some sort of agreement. The Navi then launch further attacks upon the dozers, also killing the escorting personnel. The RDA therefore naturally assumes that, well, okay, they're attacking us, no negotiations appear to be possible whatsoever, our diplomats simply didn't do anything, and the natives have already been attacking the humans for ages. We can see their massive arrows sticking out of the wheels of a truck early on that simply trundles on as if this is just routine, suggesting that these attacks are frequent. We have already heard of such previous attacks on dozers, and the Navi are simply known as hostiles to the security personnel. The Navi are aggressors here as well. Indeed, the only ones that seem sympathetic to the Navi are the scientists, because they have a personal bond with them, or because they've been brainwashed. Now, there is no firm evidence of this, mind you, but we know that the Navi connect to Eywa via the various tentacles and the vines and the sacred trees, and that all the tree roots are connected to the sacred trees. Well, the scientists have been poking these things and assume that they are in essence vast data repositories, meaning that it can store knowledge. are we entirely sure that it can't download something as well? That there isn't something being downloaded into the scientists when they poke and prod all of these things? I mean, think about it. The Navi seem to live in perfect uniformity, no internal strife, with a laid-out plan of succession for chiefs and shamans. It could simply be that they are a very communally loyal culture, of course, and there seems to be many indications of this, but then there is something strange that Dr. Grace says. They never even wanted us to succeed, she says about the RDA, then continues, they bulldozed a sacred site on purpose just to provoke a reaction. This is a very odd thing for her to say. Firstly, because she knows better than anyone, being the leader of the Avatar program, just what enormous quantities of cash and research the RDA has poured into the Avatar program expressly to communicate with the Navi. She also knows that neither her nor Jake ever made any effort to talk to the Navi about moving. Grace should also, just like Jake, have known about the bulldozers coming for months and could easily have gotten updates on where they were and where they were heading. Again, she didn't say or do anything. As finally, bulldozed a sacred site on purpose, the RDA administrator didn't even know there was a sacred site there. Grace has to explain the significance of that particular grove to the administrator in person after it's been hit. Now, it is entirely possible that the administrator, who is played somewhat callously so, might have not cared, but he seems genuinely confused and upset, like, oh god, everything on this world is sacred. Like he genuinely didn't understand. Whose job is it to make him understand? Grace. And guess what? Even after war is all but openly declared, and the operation to get the Navi out of Home Tree is already underway, that same RDA administrator that just wants war and has always wanted the scientists to fail, he gives them another chance to go talk to the Navi. Grace's entire story, more so correctly, her entire perception of the world is wrong. Now, perhaps she is simply so closely attached to the Navi that she cannot see this. Perhaps it is simply poor writing. Or again, perhaps something was being downloaded along with their poking and prodding in scientific pursuits. But given yet another chance, what does Jake do? He antagonizes the Navi further, declaring that a great evil is on the way, and the Sky People are coming to destroy the Home Tree. And again, bear you in mind, as the icing on the cake, he then lies. He says that he was sent to learn the Navi way so that he could bring that message that the Sky People are coming to destroy their homes. Even now, Jake makes no attempt to negotiate, no attempt to convince the Navi to leave. He only declares that the humans cannot be satisfied, that there is no agreement that can possibly be reached, and that they sent him specifically to declare war on them. And even in this situation, the RDA is still holding back as well. They bring up their gunships with Papa Dragon in front. They confirm that Jake's worthless traitor's ass has been captured and tied up, presumably for execution or something. Then the gunships start scattering the natives with tear gas. After the natives then begin attacking them, then and only then does the RDA begin to pseudo-fight by firing incendiaries to begin taking down Home Tree. After scattering the natives, pointedly not simply slaughtering them either, the gunships pull back and take down the tree as strategically as they can. Now, many Navi die during this operation, it's absolutely true, and make no mistake, it is of course a hostile act, this, perpetrated by the RDA, but it is one that the humans only commit after multiple failed attempts to communicate, and even after the aggression from the natives, they still only destroy the tree. When in this scenario, had the humans truly wanted to, they could have come in machine gunning and rocket podding, all weapons blazing, chasing the shattered and scattered Navi, and probably wiping them out, or if not eradicating them completely, leaving nothing but a handful of shell-shocked survivors left who would never dare raise a hand against the RDA again. The RDA holds back to the point of parody over and over again, and of course will come to regret this act of mercy, as Jake goes on to rally many other tribes together, after having been given a very big bird to fly, as he preys upon the native superstition about a large monstrous creature that just so happens to fly around where Jake can see it, just so happens to not check above itself, and just so happens to not toss Jake off, or any of the other countless things that could have gone wrong. Again, I point out that Eywa literally controls all of this. And this is a bird, by the way, that he later just kind of abandons, as we don't see it again later. But Jake rallies an army in the thousands, and having experienced nothing but mounting aggression from the Navi, naturally the humans assume this force will be used to wipe them out. After everything that has happened, it would be nothing short of lunacy to assume anything else. And the head of security, Quaritch, makes the case that with the Navi's ever-increasing numbers, the only hope for the human presence on Pandora is a preemptive strike. And taking into consideration the Navi's proven hostility, and with the escalation on behalf of the RDA with the destruction of Home Tree, and, of course, the continued presence of the traitors, who have broken out of RDA containment and are now actively aiding and abetting the enemy, feeding them all the information they could possibly ever desire about the base and its defenses, this is an eminently reasonable assumption to make. And there, by the way, is a highly related and interesting point as well. Miles Quaritch, the head of the RDA security team, is an incredibly popular character, so much so that he was brought back in the sequel despite being very dead. But even more impressive is of course the fact that he is so beloved despite being the face of the main antagonist. He is the bad guy, and yet everybody adores him. And this is not just because his actor is amazing. Seriously, go watch this guy's performance in Gods and Generals. It is just so perfect. But the reason why we love Quaritch is because he comes across as both very charismatic and also as a very understandable, realistic character. He does not hate the Navi arbitrarily, for example, or unjustly. His men have been killed by the Navi. He himself has been wounded by the planet. That is all supposedly connected, yet again. Even so, however, he still shows restraint. After his patrol and yet more of his men that were moving along with the dozers are killed, the first military operation against Home Tree simply destroys the habitat. Quaritch himself says that he will carry out the operation with a minimum of casualties, and indeed he does so. He makes no effort at all whatsoever to wipe out or pursue the then helpless savages. Despite having plenty of reason to do so, he is not taking revenge, which places him in sharp contrast to the Navi. Remember, when their sacred glade, one of countless we now know, was destroyed by the dozers, they immediately declared war and went out to kill the RDA personnel. Yet again, as has now become a firmly established pattern, the RDA, the humans, and even the main villain, Quaritch, repeatedly demonstrates greater humanity and restraint than the supposed good guys. And that is, of course, because Quaritch is simply doing what is necessary. The attack on Home Tree was a necessary act. The preemptive strike against the massing Navi is a necessary act. And whilst, yes, Quaritch does absolutely champion military intervention against the Navi, and have done so on multiple occasions, he still allowed all other diplomatic efforts to go ahead. He simply never believed that they would succeed. And as things turned out, Quaritch was right. Inescapably so. For the billionth time, Jake made no effort to negotiate, nor did the rest of the science team who, as we have speculated, may have had entirely different and not entirely natural motivations. And in yet further contrast, whilst it is difficult to puzzle out why the science team never carried out their mission, other than, as I've been speculating, having been affected by Eywa, Quaritch's motivations and ideas here are very clear and very sensible. He believes, correctly so, as demonstrated time and time again, that the only way to cooperate with the Navi is to force their cooperation. Now, he will do it humanely if he can, but right now the lives of all of his men and all of the humans on Pandora, who are his responsibility to keep alive, all of their lives are threatened. And he will do anything to safeguard them, including turning a shuttle into a jury-rigged bomber to go out and destroy the natives' sacred artifact, around which they are rallying. And the irony, yet again, of course, is that it was humanity's softness that brought about this situation in the first place. Look at their base of operation. It is barely fortified. It is protected by what is in essence a fence. And they haven't even cleared fire lanes through the jungle around their mines and their base. Why is that? Is it because they simply forgot? Of course not. We see in the second movie the kind of fortifications a human can make, with massed clear fire lanes covered by automatic cannon turrets. So the only reason why they wouldn't have done so already is as some form of a good faith overture to the Navi. Okay, we get it, your jungle is sacred, we're not gonna do this. We're gonna give you this moment of trust, which of course the Navi no doubt abused and started attacking the dozers, as again we saw giant arrows in the dump trucks. And if humanity had simply assumed Quaritch's position right off the bat, then none of this would have been necessary. If the humans were safely ensconced in massed fortified bases, then the blue savages could jump around doing whatever the hell they wanted deep out in the middle of nowhere. This sense of security would also have guaranteed that there would be fewer casualties for both sides, as the humans wouldn't feel the need to launch a preemptive strike like this. And this all boils back down to the key point, that the audience knows this. Subconsciously, all of this is clear to the watcher. It is why Quaritch is one of the movie's most popular characters, and one of the very few that has had some measure of meme magic created around him. And of course, in turn, why he is, despite all laws of logics, brought back in the second movie. As, indeed, Quaritch's plan fails, and the humans are driven off Pandora. But as nothing has actually changed, and Earth is still in dire need of Pandora's resources, the humans obviously return. They have no other choice, and this time they are going to be far more assertive about it, making damn sure that the natives know they are there to stay. But even then, even after the First Pandoran War, the humans simply cannot get over their humane ways and instinct. Instead of launching a war of straight-up genocidal annihilation, they conduct anti-insurgency ops against the Navi. They are attempting to assassinate rebel leadership. They're attempting to pacify villagers by patrolling them instead of simply destroying them outright. And of course, yet again, as with every other time the humans have tried a soft hand, the reticence comes back to bite them. At this point, it genuinely feels like the core point of Avatar is simply to say that a gentle tone of voice is never respected, whereas a fist is. But more importantly than that as well, this shows and demonstrates yet another point of disconnect between the audience and the movie: the apparent incompetence of the human military. At the end of the first movie, most people left the theater a little confused. Sure, the traitor Jake had won a victory through the power of Eywa, mobilizing the animals to fight alongside the Navi, but the Navi remain monkeys climbing through the trees. What is then going to happen when humanity comes back? As it inevitably would, because as mentioned, all of humanity's problems are still present. And this time, surely, it won't be some makeshift security force using shuttles for bombing missions. And the Navi were only able to stop that through the powers of the entire planet. What are the Navi, or Eywa for that matter, going to do to stop the humans from simply dropping a tungsten arrow out from orbit and obliterating the Navi's sacred place? Indeed, most of the theory crafting after the movie was about this topic. Surely, the blueberries are screwed. And indeed, even with the arrival of the second movie, there is no satisfactory explanation for this beyond because the movie said so, bruh. Indeed, the official explanation only makes things worse. As in the lore, the RDA, you see, is the only company that is allowed to mine space. In total, the Earth's government sold monopoly mining rights for the universe to a single company. This alone is utterly preposterous to the point of parody, and yet, despite this, despite the RDA being, without a shadow of a doubt, the richest and most powerful entity to have ever existed in human history, it still, apparently, feels bound by the EU's laws that forbid it from deploying orbital weapons. What? It is a classic case of the enemy is both infinitely powerful to introduce a sense of, oh my god, it's so dangerous, and infinitely weak at the same time, so as to allow our heroes to overcome the odds that weren't even that bad in the first place. But we don't even need to go to that high level of orbital nukes and rods from gods to see the nonsensical insanities that are forcibly created to manufacture a way to let the primitives win over the humans. We can, for example, look at the fact the humans just simply seemingly refuse to put bulletproof glass on their cockpits, on their silly little airships. For some mysterious reason, they refuse to armor those things against bows and arrows, as even in the second movie, the arrows pierce through them with ease. But let's not even talk about something so complex as an armored cockpit. The humans continued to ship out thousands of rifles with no anti-Navi safety features on them, allowing the Navi to pick up and use the humans' machine guns as well. Why can't we gene lock that shit? I mean, surely a Navi must be significantly different from a human being, right? A palm reader? Or hell, the bare minimum, at least make the weapon deeply uncomfortable to use for an alien with twice our hand size. Or the primary reason why they're adding new avatars to their army. Well, you see, they can't get close to the area where the Navi sacred place is anymore in the floating mountains, because the moment anything human moves into that area, hordes of flying creatures attack. Okay, that makes a degree of sense from the first film. Eywa has created a sanctuary. Alright. Break it. So what if they attack you with hundreds of flying creatures? You've got ships like Papa Dragon. Just cover it with flak AA. The enemy are fleshy animals. Slap a dozen optically guided flak-capable cannons on that thing. Form up 4 or 5 Papa Dragons. And then simply fly them into the floating mountains. At the first sight of a winged lizard, slap in some proximity detonated flak shells into those dozens of cannons and let loose. Thousands of banshees will be falling to the ground, shredded to pieces by massed bursts of whizzing metal fired out of exploding flak shells. I'd like to see them outbreed those casualty figures. And oh my god, we're not even getting to the bad part. Do not get me started on the Water Tribe. The humans don't even need weapons to destroy them. Seriously, all they need is a military-grade sonar system. That's all. For you see, a warship's sonar pings the water at the equivalent force of 235 decibels. For your reference, your lungs will collapse at 200 decibels. And the area of lethality of this can extend for hundreds of meters at least and up to kilometers. Not to mention the absolutely devastating effect the shockwave of depth charges would have on unprotected Navi. You don't need torpedoes or shrapnel or machine guns to murder the Water Tribe. All you need is a P-3 Orion dumping active sonar buoys into the water. This obvious military superiority of the humans also, again, comes in sharp contrast to their actual behavior, as even in the second movie, the humans are both unreasoningly evil and absurdly humane at the same time, further reinforcing the disconnect in the audience. For example, they refuse to simply wipe out villagers of the Water Tribe when there is no reason not to do so. What, negative PR? It's gonna take a decade for the news to reach Earth in the first place. And after the destruction of the preceding colony, I imagine the humans have all the cause belli they could ever possibly conceivably need. And the humans know they're going to end up in conflict with the Water Tribe because they're hunting the Tulkun, which the Navi view as treasured and sacred family members. Oh, and the space whales. So, the space whales. The movie states that they have culture and music and math and are super intelligent, which is obvious nonsense. And when the humans capture one, and this is the unreasonably evil part, they only get the magic brain goop that apparently halts human aging. After which they dump the mountain of meat and other resources straight back into the ocean again. Really? Really, on a planet half a decade's travel away from Earth, where all food and material has to be sourced locally, the humans would throw away God only knows how many dozens of tons of food and resources. Why? Why? The only reason is so that the movie can go, oh, hey, look, the humans, they're bad. This is like that bison thing where they shot bisons and only took their pelt and horns. How terrible. And yes, it is terribly stupid, and joins the long line as yet another niggling little data point that makes the viewer doubt who the real heroes and the victims are in all of this. So, to finally summarize all of this into the key point, humanity is fighting for its survival right now. We are told that Earth is in essence collapsing. Everything is going wrong. Resources are running out. And despite humanity's efforts to try and salvage the situation, as we see in the first movie where they talk about having been able to clone extinguished species, which is another obvious example of humanity going, okay, obviously we shouldn't eradicate these creatures, duh. We need to try and bring them back because we feel bad. It's not enough. They need to get into space. They need to become a multiplanetary species, and they need access to the resources that can be found on other planets or perish. Humanity is fighting for its survival. And that is, of course, the exact same justification that the Navi use. Why are the Navi resisting? Well, because this is ours. We have this. This is necessary for the survival of our people, our culture, and our way of life. The humans then simply go in and say, okay, well, we are the superior advanced species. We have understood that we've made errors in the past when it comes to eradicating local species. We don't want to do that anymore. We are trying to negotiate with you on every level possible. We are even going to make things that look like you to talk your language to you directly. We will give you anything, but we're backed into a corner as well. We need these resources. We will not leave without them, because if we do, we die. A point that the Navi either ignore or simply don't find persuasive. And so, after all diplomacy fails, humanity moves in with military force to try and take what they need. They are defeated because they hold back far too much. Then humanity comes back because they still need the resources, and humanity is defeated in a smaller scale this second time, but yet again defeated because they still hold back, because they still are not actually fighting, as if this is a serious confrontation. And perhaps it is not. Perhaps humanity has found other planets that they can exploit. Perhaps humanity is mining the asteroids even now, as they should be. But the movie makes no mention of it, which leaves yet another final niggling inconsistency in the minds of the viewer. Why is humanity even bothering with this backwater civilization? Why is humanity not simply taking everything else? And as the mountain of inconsistencies finally tip over, the only reasonable conclusion to reach is that Avatar is the story of the losers, of the backwater primitives, holding on for one more day as the rest of the universe is taken by humanity. This is the tale of an insignificant conflict on an insignificant planet, following the fate of an insignificant traitor, whose only legacy will be the infamy of having turned against his own again and again. That is why the only cultural legacy of Avatar are the humans. That is why Miles Quaritch is the only popular one. That is why the RDA is the only source of memes and interesting discussions around Avatar. And therefore I will wrap this up by reading one of these beautiful little stories. Spare us your pity, alien. You gush about your connection with nature, your primal wisdom, but what has it brought to you? Where are your marvels of engineering, your voyages of discovery, your great insights into the nature of the universe? Even at our basest, when we dressed as you, dwelt as you, hunted as you do, lived as you do, we did more than merely survive. We built wonders. We made great journeys. We forged epics. You have not. You speak so proudly of the plugs dangling from your skull, little realizing that they are but strings and you the puppet. What little you have accomplished, you attribute not to yourself, but the wisdom of your goddess, who is nothing but the voices of your dead echoing for all eternity. She moors you in the past, serving as a leash that keeps you as little better than apes. Sad parodies of civilization that lack that special spark to become something more. We have come to your world in search of resources. Whether your actions drive us back, or we take what we want and move on, the outcome is the same. We will depart from your wretched planet, leaving you behind. And in 1,000 years, you will not have changed from this contact with another world. You will remain in your trees, hunting your prey, communing with your goddess, until your sun burns out and your world dies. And above your tomb, the stars will belong to us.